Lucas Reed thought the worst part of the blizzard was being sent home early. He was wrong. The moment he stepped through his front door into silence that felt too heavy, saw footprints in melted snow that weren't his, heard nothing from upstairs where his 6-year-old daughter should have been laughing, he knew. Something was already inside his home. Someone dangerous. And they weren't looking for valuables. They were looking for something he didn't even know he had. Something worth killing for. His daughter was hiding somewhere, thinking it was a game. But the men searching his bedroom upstairs? They weren't playing. Like this story? Comment your city below so I can see how far this tale travels. Now, let's begin. The wind hit Lucas Reed like a fist the moment he stepped outside the warehouse. February in Chicago didn't ask permission. It just took. Took your breath, took feeling from your fingers, took any illusion that you had control over anything. The blizzard had rolled in 3 hours earlier than forecasted, which meant the city was about to lock down hard. Roads would vanish under snow. The L would slow to nothing. Anyone with sense was already home. Lucas pulled his jacket tighter and started toward the employee lot, boots crunching through snow that was already ankle-deep. His shift supervisor had called it early. No point keeping the loading docks open when trucks couldn't get through. Lucas didn't argue. He had one priority, and it wasn't overtime. His daughter. Emma was 6. She'd be at home with Mrs. Alvarez, probably curled up on the couch watching something with talking animals, completely oblivious to the storm trying to bury the city. Safe, warm, exactly where she should be. Lucas's phone buzzed as he reached his truck, a 15-year-old Ford that ran on stubbornness and duct tape. He checked the screen. Mrs. Alvarez. Everything fine here? Emma had dinner. Don't rush, roads look bad. He typed back quickly. Heading home now. Be there in 20. The drive took 35. The streets were chaos. Cars sliding, brake lights flaring red through sheets of snow, someone's sedan abandoned at an angle across 2 lanes. Lucas navigated it all with the grim patience of someone who'd lived through a dozen Chicago winters. The wipers fought a losing battle. The heater rattled, but the truck kept moving, and that was enough. When he finally turned onto his street, the neighborhood looked like something from a snow globe someone had shaken too hard. Most houses were lit up warm against the dark, glowing yellow and orange through curtains. His place, a narrow 2-story he'd been renting for 4 years, sat near the end of the block. Something was wrong. Lucas couldn't name it at first. Just a feeling, the kind that used to wake him up in the middle of the night when Emma was a baby, and he'd know, before he even heard her, that she was about to cry. The porch light was off. He always left it on. Mrs. Alvarez's car was still in the driveway, buried under snow. That was normal. But the living room curtains were drawn tight, and he could only see a thin sliver of light from inside. And there, near the front steps, barely visible under fresh snow, footprints. Not his, not Mrs. Alvarez's. Larger, deeper, leading up to the door. Lucas killed the engine and sat there for 5 seconds, listening to his own breathing. Then he got out, left the door open, and moved toward the house. The snow muffled everything. His boots, the wind, the faint sound of a car alarm going off 3 blocks away. He reached the porch, stepped carefully around the footprints, and pulled out his keys. The door was unlocked. He never left it unlocked. Lucas pushed it open slowly, stepping into the narrow entryway. Warm air hit his face, but it didn't comfort him. The house was too quiet. No TV, no voices, just the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the soft creak of old wood settling. Mrs. Alvarez? Nothing. Emma? Still nothing. He moved into the living room. The lamp in the corner was on, casting long shadows across the couch. A blanket was folded neatly over the armrest. Emma's coloring books were stacked on the coffee table, crayons lined up in a row like soldiers. Everything looked normal, except it wasn't. Lucas's pulse kicked up. He turned toward the stairs and froze. Someone was sitting in the chair by the window. A woman, mid-30s maybe. Dark coat, expensive looking. Her posture was controlled, spine straight, hands folded in her lap. She didn't move when he came in, didn't flinch, just watched him with eyes that were calm and sharp and completely terrified. "Don't speak," she said quietly. "Don't shout, just listen." Lucas took a step forward. "Where's my daughter?" "She's safe. Upstairs. Hiding in her closet with Mrs. Alvarez. She thinks it's a game." The woman's voice was steady, but her knuckles were white where her hands pressed together. I need you to stay calm. Who the hell are you? My name is Victoria Hale. She said it like he should recognize it. He didn't. I came here tonight because I needed to speak with you about something urgent, something from your past. But when I arrived, a sound from upstairs. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Lucas's entire body went cold. Victoria's eyes flicked toward the ceiling, then back to him. There are 2 men in your bedroom, she said, voice barely above a whisper. They've been up there for 10 minutes. They're looking for something. Did you call the police? They cut the landline. My phone's in my car. I couldn't get to it without them seeing. Lucas stared at her. His mind was racing, trying to fit pieces together that didn't make sense. What are they looking for? I don't know. Victoria's jaw tightened. But I think you do. I don't? Another sound, closer this time. A drawer sliding open. Something heavy being moved. Lucas looked at the stairs, then back at Victoria. How long have you been sitting there? Since they went up? I told Mrs. Alvarez to hide Emma and stay quiet. She didn't ask questions. Victoria leaned forward slightly. Whoever those men are, they're not here to rob you. They're searching, methodically, like they know exactly what they're looking for. Lucas's throat was dry. And you just stayed down here? I didn't have a choice. If I'd run, they would have heard. If I'd screamed, they would have come down. Her voice cracked just a little. So I sat here, and I waited. For you. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Lucas crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed the fireplace poker leaning against the brick, and started toward the stairs. Wait! He didn't wait. The stairs creaked under his weight. He didn't care. Let them hear. Let them know someone was coming. His daughter was up there, tucked into her closet, probably clutching her stuffed rabbit, thinking this was just another one of Dad's games. That thought alone made his vision narrow. The hallway upstairs was dark, except for a thin line of light under his bedroom door. Lucas reached it, poker gripped tight in his right hand, and pushed the door open. 2 men stood inside. The first one was broad-shouldered, mid-40s, wearing black tactical pants and a jacket that didn't quite hide the bulge at his hip. The second was younger, thinner, with a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile a long time ago. They both turned at the same time, and for a second nobody moved. Then the older one spoke. Mr. Reed. Not a question. A statement. Lucas didn't lower the poker. Get out of my house. The man raised his hands slowly, palms out, calm. Too calm. We're not here to hurt anyone. Then why are you in my bedroom? We're looking for something that belongs to us. Nothing in this house belongs to you. The younger man stepped forward. You sure about that? Lucas shifted his weight, angling the poker toward him. I'm sure I'm about 2 seconds from calling the cops. You don't want to do that, the older man said. His voice was flat, matter of fact. This situation is more complicated than you realize. Complicated? Lucas's voice rose. You broke into my house while my daughter's upstairs. We didn't break in. The door was unlocked. Lucas felt something snap inside him. He took a step forward, and the older man's hand moved toward his hip. Stop. Victoria's voice. She was at the top of the stairs now, phone in hand, screen glowing. I already called the police, she said, her tone cold and cutting. They'll be here in 5 minutes. Less, if the storm clears. The 2 men exchanged a glance. The older one turned back to Lucas. You don't know what you have. Then enlighten me. A woman named Sarah Brennan. You knew her. Lucas went still. She hid something, the man continued. Something dangerous. And she hid it here. In this house. You might not know it's here, but it is, and we need it back before it falls into the wrong hands. Who's Sarah Brennan? Victoria asked. Lucas didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind had locked onto the name, dragging up memories he'd buried years ago. Sarah. Bright smile. Sharp mind. Always asking questions. Always digging into things she shouldn't. She'd disappeared 3 years ago. Officially, it was a hiking accident somewhere out west. Unofficially, Lucas had always wondered. I don't have anything of hers, he said quietly. You do, the younger man said. You just don't know it yet. Sirens. Faint but growing louder. The older man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. "We're leaving. But this doesn't end here, Mr. Reed. You'll want to start looking." He moved toward the door, the younger man following, before someone else does. They were gone before Lucas could respond. He heard their footsteps on the stairs, the front door opening, the sound of them disappearing into the storm. Victoria lowered her phone. "I didn't actually call the police." Lucas turned to her. "What?" "I needed them to leave. I wasn't sure they would if I really called." She slipped the phone into her coat pocket. "But we should call now. Actually call." "No." Lucas, no. He dropped the poker, moved past her, and crossed the hall to Emma's room. The closet door was shut. He knocked softly. "Em? It's Dad. Game's over." Silence. "Emma, come on out, sweetheart." The door cracked open. Mrs. Alvarez's face appeared first, pale and shaken. Then Emma, clutching Mr. Floppy, her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide and confused. "Dad?" Lucas pulled her into his arms and held her so tight she squeaked. "You're okay. You're okay. I've got you." "Was that a real game?" Emma whispered. "Yeah, a real game. And you won." He kissed the top of her head. "You did great." Mrs. Alvarez stepped out, wringing her hands. "Mr. Reed, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. That woman said to hide and I just—" "You did the right thing." Lucas stood, Emma still in his arms. "Can you stay with her for a minute? I need to talk to Victoria Hale." Victoria had followed him into the hallway. She extended a hand to Mrs. Alvarez, who took it hesitantly. "I apologize for the chaos." Mrs. Alvarez nodded, took Emma gently from Lucas's arms, and retreated back into the room. Lucas turned to Victoria. "Start talking. Who are you really?" "I'm the CEO of Hale Acquisitions. We handle mergers, corporate intelligence, financial restructuring." She said it like she was reading from a resume. "Sarah Brennan worked for me. Briefly, 3 years ago." Lucas's stomach dropped. "Doing what?" "Investigating a series of shell companies tied to a larger financial network. She was good. Too good. She found things people didn't want found." Victoria's expression hardened. "And then she disappeared. They said it was an accident. They lied." Lucas leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. "Why are you here?" "Because 2 weeks ago I started receiving threats. Anonymous. Professional. They referenced Sarah's work. They implied I had something I shouldn't." Victoria crossed her arms. "I didn't, but I remembered Sarah mentioning you once in passing. She said you were someone she trusted, someone who'd keep something safe without asking questions. She never gave me anything." "Are you sure?" Lucas opened his mouth to answer and stopped. He thought back. 3 years ago. Sarah had come by the house once, maybe twice. They'd been friends, nothing more. She'd seemed distracted, worried. He'd asked if she was okay, and she'd smiled that too bright smile and said everything was fine. But there was one time, one afternoon, late summer, she'd asked to use his garage. Said her car was making a weird noise, wanted to check under the hood. He'd handed her the keys, gone inside to make Emma lunch. When he came back out 20 minutes later, Sarah was gone. She'd left a note on the workbench. "Thanks, you're a good friend." He'd never thought about it again. Until now. Lucas pushed away from the wall and headed downstairs. Victoria followed. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Checking something." The garage was cluttered. Boxes, tools, Emma's old tricycle, a lawnmower that barely worked. Lucas moved through it all, searching. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he'd know it when he found it. He pulled open the old metal cabinet in the corner, the one he never used because the lock was busted and the shelves were full of junk. Paint cans, rusty screws, a tarp, and underneath the tarp, wedged between 2 cans of primer, a small black case. Hard plastic, sealed tight. Lucas lifted it out slowly. Victoria stepped closer. "Is that?" "I don't know." He carried it back inside, set it on the kitchen table, and stared at it. The case had no markings, no labels, just a small keypad lock on the front. "Do you know the code?" Victoria asked. "No." "Then how?" Lucas pressed his thumb against the keypad. The lock clicked. The case opened. Inside was a hard drive and a folded piece of paper. Lucas unfolded the paper carefully. Sarah's handwriting, neat, precise. "Lucas, If you're reading this, it means something went wrong. I'm sorry. I never wanted to drag you into this, but I didn't have a choice. The drive contains everything I found: names, transactions, evidence. Enough to bring down people who won't hesitate to kill to keep it hidden. I trust you because you're not part of this world. You don't ask questions, you don't dig. You just take care of the people you love. That's why I know you'll do the right thing. Keep Emma safe. And if someone comes looking, don't fight them. Give them the drive. It's not worth your life. I'm sorry. Sarah Lucas read it twice. Then he set the paper down and looked at Victoria. She hid it here, he said quietly, 3 years ago. And I never knew. Victoria stared at the hard drive like it was a live grenade. We need to turn this over to the authorities. Immediately. To who? The same people who covered up her death? Lucas. A sound. From the basement. Both of them froze. It came again. A scrape. Metal on concrete. Lucas moved toward the basement door. Every muscle in his body coiled tight. Don't, Victoria hissed. Don't go down there. He went anyway. The basement stairs creaked. The light switch didn't work. He'd been meaning to fix it for months. Lucas descended into darkness, using his phone's flashlight to cut through the black. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floor, exposed pipes, a water heater in the corner, and a small window near the ceiling that was open. Snow was blowing in through the gap, and below it on the floor were wet footprints, fresh. Lucas turned just as someone grabbed him from behind. He didn't think. He reacted. Elbow back, hard, into ribs. A grunt of pain. He twisted, swung his phone like a weapon, connected with something solid. Whoever it was stumbled back, and Lucas ran. He hit the stairs, took them 2 at a time, slammed the basement door behind him, and locked it. Victoria was standing in the kitchen, the hard drive clutched in her hands, eyes wide. There's someone else, Lucas said, breathing hard. In the house. Before she could respond, the back door exploded inward. 2 more men. Different from the first 2. Bigger, colder. One of them pointed a gun at Lucas. Give us the drive. Lucas raised his hand slowly. Take it. Just take it and go. The man with the gun tilted his head. It's not that simple. Victoria stepped forward, voice shaking but controlled. If this is about Sarah Brennan's work, we can negotiate. I have resources, connections. We can make a deal. The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You think this is about a deal? Then what is it about? Making sure no one ever sees what's on that drive. He raised the gun higher. Which means no witnesses. Lucas's heart stopped. Emma, upstairs, hiding with Mrs. Alvarez. He looked at Victoria, she looked back, and in that moment, something passed between them. An understanding, a decision. Lucas lunged, not at the gunman, at the light switch. The kitchen went black, shouting, movement. Victoria screamed. Lucas grabbed her arm, pulled her toward the living room. A gunshot cracked through the air, deafening, and something shattered behind them. They hit the floor behind the couch. Lucas's ears were ringing. His hands were shaking. Emma, he gasped. I need to get to Emma. Victoria grabbed his wrist. They'll kill you if you move. I don't care. I do. Another gunshot. This one punched through the couch, stuffing exploding outward. Lucas pressed himself flat, phone still clutched in his hand. He dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Someone broke into my house, Lucas said, voice low and fast. They have guns. My daughter's upstairs. Send everyone. He gave the address, dropped the phone, and looked at Victoria. When the police get here, those men will run. Or they'll kill us first. Then we don't give them the chance. Lucas crawled toward the fireplace, grabbed the poker again, and stood. The kitchen was still dark. He could hear movement, footsteps, whispered voices. They were regrouping, deciding their next move. He didn't give them time. Lucas moved fast, swinging the poker toward the nearest sound. It connected. Someone cursed. He swung again, wild, desperate. Hands grabbed him, slammed him into the wall. The poker clattered to the floor. A fist hit his ribs, then his jaw. Pain exploded through his skull. But he didn't go down. He grabbed the man's jacket, pulled him close, and drove his knee up hard. The man doubled over. Lucas shoved him aside and stumbled toward the stairs. "Emma!" he shouted. "Stay in the closet! Don't come out!" A hand grabbed his ankle. He went down hard, hitting the floor with a crack that rattled his teeth. Someone was dragging him back, away from the stairs, away from his daughter. No! Lucas twisted, kicking blind. His boot connected with something soft. The grip loosened. He scrambled forward on his hands and knees, reaching for the banister. Sirens. Close. Getting closer. The men in the kitchen froze. Then they ran. Lucas heard the back door slam. Footsteps retreating. The sound of engines starting outside. And then, silence. He lay there on the floor, chest heaving, vision blurred. Victoria crawled over to him, face pale, hands shaking. "Are you okay?" she whispered. "Emma," he said. "Check on Emma." Victoria nodded and disappeared up the stairs. Lucas closed his eyes and listened to the sirens growing louder. When the police burst through the front door, lights flooding the house, he was still on the floor. Still breathing, still alive, and upstairs, his daughter was safe. That was all that mattered. The emergency room smelled like disinfectant and bad coffee. Lucas sat on the edge of an examination table while a nurse with tired eyes cleaned the cut above his eyebrow. Emma was curled up in a plastic chair across the room, Mr. Floppy clutched tight against her chest, watching cartoons on a mounted TV with the volume turned low. Mrs. Alvarez had been checked over and sent home in a squad car an hour ago, still shaking but unharmed. Victoria stood near the door, arms crossed, speaking quietly into her phone. She'd been making calls since they arrived. To her lawyer, her head of security, someone she kept referring to as Mitchell, in a tone that suggested he was used to cleaning up messes. "You're lucky," the nurse said, pressing a butterfly bandage over the cut. "Could have been a lot worse." Lucas didn't feel lucky. He felt hollowed out, like someone had reached inside him and scooped everything clean. "Dad?" Emma's voice was small. "Can we go home now?" "Soon, sweetheart." "I don't like it here." "I know." The nurse finished, gave him instructions he only half heard about keeping the wound clean and watching for signs of concussion, then left with a clipboard and a sympathetic smile that made Lucas want to put his fist through the wall. Victoria ended her call and crossed the room. "The police want to talk to you again." "I already talked to them." "They have more questions." Of course they did. Lucas had spent 40 minutes in his living room going through everything that happened while officers photographed broken glass and took statements. He told them about the first two men, the ones who'd mentioned Sarah Brennan. He told them about the second group, the ones who'd come through the basement. He told them about the hard drive. What he hadn't told them was that Victoria had slipped the drive into her coat pocket before the police arrived, or that they'd made a silent agreement in those frantic seconds after the gunfire to keep it between them until they understood what they were dealing with. "How much longer?" Lucas asked. "An hour, maybe 2. They're processing the scene." Victoria glanced at Emma, then lowered her voice. "We need to talk. Somewhere private." Lucas looked at his daughter. She was staring at the TV, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers dug into the rabbit's worn fabric. She was 6. She didn't understand what had happened tonight, but she knew it wasn't normal. She knew her dad was scared, even if he was trying to hide it. "Emma," Lucas said gently, "I need to step outside for a minute. You okay here?" She nodded without looking at him. "I'll be right back. I promise." He followed Victoria into the hallway. It was quieter out here, just the distant sound of a heart monitor beeping and someone coughing in one of the other rooms. Victoria led him to a small waiting area near the vending machines and turned to face him. "I had Mitchell run a preliminary analysis on the drive," she said without preamble. Lucas blinked. "You what?" "He's ex-NSA, works private security for my firm now. I sent him an encrypted photo of the serial number." She pulled out her phone, swiped through something, then held it up. "This isn't just a random hard drive. It's military-grade storage, the kind intelligence agencies use for classified data. Sarah didn't just hide evidence, Lucas. She hid something big enough that people are willing to kill for it 3 years after she's dead." Lucas stared at the screen. It showed a photograph of the hard drive, close up, with technical specifications listed underneath in small print. "How many people have you told about this?" he asked. "Just Mitchell, and he doesn't ask questions." "Good, keep it that way." Victoria lowered the phone. "We can't keep this quiet forever. Eventually, the police are going to want to know what's on it. Then we don't tell them. Lucas, those men tonight? They weren't working alone. You said it yourself. Sarah worked for you, investigating financial crimes, shell companies, money laundering. That's corporate espionage, organized crime, maybe worse. Lucas leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. If we hand that drive over to the cops, who's to say it doesn't disappear? Who's to say someone on the inside isn't already involved? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. You're right. We need to know what we're dealing with before we make any moves. Can Mitchell access the files? Possibly. But it'll take time. The encryption is heavy. Military grade, like I said. She hesitated. There's something else. What? I pulled Sarah's employment records after I left your house tonight, before everything went sideways. Victoria's expression tightened. She wasn't just investigating shell companies. She was tracking a network, a financial empire built on offshore accounts, fake subsidiaries, and laundered money funneled through legitimate businesses. She called it Helix. Lucas felt something cold settle in his gut. Helix? It's not a company. It's a system, a way of moving money so it can't be traced. Sarah found the beginning of the thread, but she never got far enough to see who was pulling it. Whoever runs Helix has connections everywhere, corporations, law enforcement, politicians. She was getting close to names when she disappeared. And you think that's what got her killed? I know it is. Victoria's voice was hard. The threats I received 2 weeks ago? They referenced Helix. Someone knows I have ties to Sarah's work. Someone knows I might have access to what she found. And now they know you have it. Lucas closed his eyes. His head was pounding. His ribs ached. His daughter was sitting in a hospital room watching cartoons because armed men had broken into their home looking for something he didn't even know existed until tonight. How do we stop this? He asked quietly. We expose them. We take everything on that drive and we make it public. Once it's out there, they can't bury it. And if they kill us before we get the chance? Victoria didn't answer. Lucas pushed off the wall and started back toward the room. I need to get Emma home. You can't go back to your house. Not tonight. Maybe not for a while. Then where are we supposed to go? I have a property downtown. A secure apartment I keep for situations like this. Corporate security, cameras, controlled access. She followed him down the hall. You and Emma can stay there until this is resolved. Lucas stopped walking. Why are you doing this? What? Helping us. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Victoria met his eyes. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain, vulnerable. Sarah trusted you, she said quietly. That's enough for me. Before Lucas could respond, a police officer appeared at the end of the hallway. Detective Morris, mid-50s, gray suit, the kind of face that had seen too much and stopped being surprised by any of it. Mr. Reed, Morris called. Got a few more questions if you have a minute. Lucas glanced at Victoria, then back at the detective. Yeah, sure. They moved to a small office near the nurses' station. Morris shut the door and gestured for Lucas to sit. Lucas stayed standing. Your house is a crime scene, Morris said, pulling out a notepad. We've got shell casings, broken glass, evidence of forced entry through the basement window. But here's what's interesting. No prints, no DNA. Whoever hit your place tonight, they were professionals. I could have told you that. You mentioned a woman, Sarah Brennan. Said the first 2 intruders brought up her name. That's right. Morris flipped through his notes. Sarah Brennan, reported missing 3 years ago. Last known location was Colorado. Officially ruled an accidental death after her body was found near a hiking trail. He looked up. What was your relationship with her? We were friends. She helped me out when Emma was born. We stayed in touch for a while, then she moved away. And you haven't seen her since? Lucas hesitated. Lying to a cop was risky, but telling the truth felt riskier. Not in person. We talked on the phone a few times, texted. Then she stopped responding. Did she ever mention Helix? Lucas's stomach dropped. He kept his expression neutral. No, what's Helix? Morris studied him for a long moment. Financial investigation term. Probably nothing. He closed the notepad. Here's the deal, Mr. Reed. You've got people breaking into your home, threatening you and your daughter, looking for something they think you have. If you know what that something is, now's the time to tell me. I don't. You sure about that? I'm sure. Morris sighed. Look, I get it. You're scared. You don't know who to trust, but I'm trying to help you here. If you're sitting on evidence, I'm not. Then why'd they come after you? You tell me. You're the detective. Morris's jaw tightened. He stood, handed Lucas a business card. Call me if you remember anything. Anything at all. We're going to have a patrol unit drive by your place tonight. Keep an eye on things, but I'd recommend staying somewhere else for a few days, just to be safe. Already planning on it. Morris nodded and left. Lucas stood there for a minute, staring at the card. Then he crumpled it in his fist and walked back to the examination room. Emma was asleep in the chair, head tilted at an awkward angle, Mr. Floppy slipping from her grip. Lucas picked her up carefully, cradling her against his chest. She stirred but didn't wake. Victoria was waiting in the hallway. What did he ask? About Sarah. About Helix. Her eyes widened. He knows? He knows the name. Doesn't mean he knows what it is. Lucas adjusted his grip on Emma. Let's go. They left through a side exit to avoid the reporters who'd started gathering in the main lobby. Word had already gotten out about the home invasion, the gunfire, the mysterious CEO who'd been on the scene. Victoria's car was parked in the emergency lot, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Lucas made in 2 years. She drove. Lucas sat in the back with Emma, watching the city blur past the window. The storm had finally started to ease, leaving the streets buried under a foot of fresh snow. Plows were out, scraping and salting, their orange lights flashing in the dark. Where are we going? Lucas asked. River North. About 20 minutes. Emma shifted against him, mumbling something in her sleep. Lucas stroked her hair and stared out at the night. Victoria's apartment was on the 40th floor of a glass tower overlooking the Chicago River. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with a security desk manned by 2 guards who nodded at Victoria like they'd been expecting her. She led Lucas and Emma to a private elevator that required a key card to operate. This is overkill, Lucas muttered. This is necessary. The apartment was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, a kitchen that looked like it had never been used. Victoria showed Lucas to a guest bedroom with a queen-size bed and an adjoining bathroom. There's clothes in the closet if you need them, she said. Towels in the bathroom. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. Lucas laid Emma down on the bed, tucked the blanket around her, and stepped back into the hallway. Thank you, he said quietly. Victoria nodded. Get some rest. We'll figure out the next steps in the morning. But Lucas didn't sleep. He sat in a chair by the window, watching the city lights stretch out below him, thinking about Sarah Brennan and the hard drive and the men who'd come into his home with guns. Somewhere out there, people were looking for him. People who wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. And Lucas had no idea how to stop them. Morning came gray and cold. Emma woke up confused, disoriented by the unfamiliar room and the skyline visible through the window. Lucas made her breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast from ingredients he found in Victoria's pristine kitchen, and tried to act like everything was normal. Are we going home today? Emma asked, poking at her eggs. Not yet. Why not? Because our house needs some fixing. Remember how those people broke the window? Emma nodded slowly. Are they going to come back? Lucas's throat tightened. No, sweetheart. They're not coming back. He didn't know if that was true, but he said it anyway because that's what you did when you were a parent. You lied to keep them safe. Victoria appeared in the doorway, dressed in fresh clothes, dark slacks, a gray sweater, her hair pulled back. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Mitchell's here, she said. We need to talk. Lucas settled Emma in the living room with her coloring books and followed Victoria to a small office near the back of the apartment. A man was waiting inside. Late 40s, broad shoulders, close-cropped hair going silver at the temples. He had the kind of stillness that came from military training, the kind that made you nervous even when he was sitting down. Lucas Reed, Victoria said. This is Mitchell Garrett. Mitchell stood and extended a hand. Lucas shook it. The grip was firm, controlled. Ms. Hale filled me in, Mitchell said, his voice low and clipped. You've had a rough night. That's one way to put it. Mitchell gestured to a laptop open on the desk. I've been working on the drive. The encryption is NSA level, but it's old. 3 years out of date. I can crack it, but it's going to take time. How much time? Victoria asked. 48 hours. Maybe less if I can bypass the secondary protocols. Lucas leaned against the desk. What happens after you crack it? We see what Sarah found, and then we decide what to do with it. We already know what to do with it, Victoria said. We go public. We expose Helix. Mitchell shook his head. That's a death sentence. You go public with something like this, you're putting a target on your back. These people don't play by the rules. They'll come after you, your families, anyone connected to you, and they won't stop until you're gone. Then what do you suggest? Lucas asked. Leverage. We use the information to negotiate. Offer them a deal. They leave you alone, and the files stay buried. Victoria's expression hardened. Absolutely not. Sarah died trying to expose these people. I'm not going to dishonor that by making a deal. Sarah's dead because she didn't have leverage, Mitchell shot back. You want to end up the same way? Because that's where this is headed. Lucas held up a hand. Let's take a breath. We don't even know what's on the drive yet. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's not worth killing over. Mitchell gave him a look that said he didn't believe that for a second. If it wasn't worth killing over, those men wouldn't have come after you last night. Fair point. Lucas rubbed his eyes. He'd been awake for over 24 hours, running on adrenaline and bad coffee. His body was starting to crash. How secure is this place? He asked. Very, Mitchell said. Building security, surveillance on every floor, controlled access. No one gets up here without clearance. You're safe for now. For now, Lucas repeated. Mitchell's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then looked at Victoria. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? Someone just accessed the building's visitor logs remotely. They're looking for you. Victoria went pale. How is that possible? Someone with access to the building's security network. Could be an inside job, could be a hack. Either way, they know you're here. Mitchell was already moving, grabbing the laptop and shoving it into a bag. We need to leave. Now. Lucas was already halfway to the door. He grabbed Emma from the living room, ignoring her protests, and followed Victoria and Mitchell to the elevator. Where are we going? Victoria asked. Somewhere they can't track us, Mitchell said. The elevator descended. Lucas's heart was pounding. Emma clung to him, sensing his fear, her small hands gripping his jacket. They reached the lobby. Mitchell stepped out first, scanning the space. The security guards were gone. The desk was empty. That's not good, Mitchell muttered. They moved quickly toward the side exit. Lucas kept Emma's face pressed against his shoulder, shielding her from whatever was about to happen. They were almost to the door when a man stepped out from behind a pillar. Not one of the men from last night, someone new, younger, dressed in a suit that didn't quite fit. Ms. Hale, the man said, smiling, we need to talk. Mitchell's hand moved to his hip where Lucas assumed a gun was holstered. Step aside. The man's smile widened. I don't think so. Two more men appeared from the stairwell, then another from the elevator. They fanned out, surrounding them, moving with the kind of precision that said they'd done this before. Lucas tightened his grip on Emma. Victoria. I know, she whispered. The first man stepped closer. You have something that belongs to my employer. We'd like it back. We don't have anything, Victoria said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Let's not play games, the hard drive. Sarah Brennan's files. You have them. The man's smile faded. You can hand them over willingly, or we can take them. Your choice. Mitchell's hand was still on his gun. Lucas could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. How many men, how fast he could draw, what the odds were. Not good. The odds were not good. We don't have the drive here, Victoria said. It's somewhere safe. Then you'll take us to it. And if I don't? The man tilted his head. Then we start with the little girl. Something snapped inside Lucas. He didn't think. He moved. He shoved Emma into Victoria's arms and lunged at the man, driving his shoulder into the guy's chest. They went down hard, hitting the marble floor with a crack. Lucas swung wild, connecting with jaw, ribs, anything he could reach. Someone grabbed him from behind. He twisted, elbowed, kicked. There were too many of them, hands everywhere, pulling him back, slamming him into the wall. A gunshot. Everyone froze. Mitchell stood in the center of the lobby, gun raised, pointed at the ceiling. Next one goes in someone's leg, he said calmly. Back off. The men hesitated, then slowly they stepped away from Lucas. Mitchell gestured toward the exit. Move, now. Victoria ran, Emma clutched tight against her. Lucas stumbled after them, vision blurred, ribs screaming. Mitchell backed toward the door, gun still raised. They burst out onto the street. The cold hit like a slap. Victoria's car was parked half a block down. They ran for it, feet slipping on ice, breath coming in ragged gasps. Lucas threw open the back door and Victoria practically threw Emma inside. Lucas climbed in after her and Mitchell took the driver's seat, engine already roaring to life. They peeled out just as the men emerged from the building. Mitchell drove fast, weaving through traffic, taking turns so sharp Lucas had to brace himself to keep from sliding. Emma was crying now, clutching Mr. Floppy, her whole body shaking. "It's okay," Lucas whispered, pulling her close. "We're okay. We're safe." But they weren't. Not even close. "Where are we going?" Victoria asked from the passenger seat. "Out of the city," Mitchell said. "Somewhere off the grid. They'll follow us." "Then we make sure they can't." Mitchell pulled into an underground parking garage, killed the lights, and drove to the lowest level. He parked between two SUVs, turned off the engine, and sat there in silence. "We can't keep running," Victoria said quietly. "We don't have a choice." "Yes, we do." She turned to look at Mitchell. "How long until you crack the drive?" "I told you, 48 hours. Do it in 24. "That's not—" "Do it in 24, Mitchell. I don't care how. Just do it." Victoria's voice was steel. "Once we know what's on there, we go to every major news outlet in the country. We release it all at once. No negotiations, no deals. We burn them to the ground." Mitchell stared at her. Then slowly, he nodded. "All right. But we need a safe place to work, somewhere they won't find us." Lucas spoke up. "I know a place." They both looked at him. "There's a cabin," he said, "about 2 hours north. Belongs to a friend of mine from the warehouse. He only uses it in the summer. It's remote. No neighbors. No one would think to look there." "Can you get the keys?" Mitchell asked. "I can get the keys." Victoria nodded. "Then that's where we go." Mitchell started the car again. They drove out of the garage, taking a different exit, and merged onto the highway heading north. Lucas held Emma and watched the city disappear behind them. His daughter had finally stopped crying, her face buried against his chest, her breathing evening out. "Dad?" she whispered. "Yeah, sweetheart." "Are we in trouble?" Lucas closed his eyes. "Yeah, we are." "Are you going to fix it?" He thought about Sarah Brennan, about the hard drive, about the men who'd invaded his home and the people who'd sent them. He thought about the mess he'd been dragged into through no fault of his own, and the impossible choice he was facing, run and hope they never found him, or fight and risk losing everything. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I'm going to fix it." Emma nodded against him, trusting him completely, and Lucas felt the weight of that trust settle over him like a chain. The highway stretched out ahead, snow piled high on either side, the sky heavy with clouds. Somewhere behind them, people were hunting. Somewhere ahead, a reckoning was waiting. Lucas tightened his arms around his daughter and stared out at the endless white. The cabin sat at the end of a dirt road that hadn't been plowed in weeks. Mitchell had to gun the engine twice to push through drifts that came up past the bumper. When they finally stopped, the silence was absolute. No traffic, no sirens, just wind moving through bare trees and the tick of the cooling engine. Lucas climbed out first, Emma still clinging to him like a barnacle. The cold bit through his jacket immediately. He scanned the clearing, old instincts kicking in, looking for movement, shadows, anything that didn't belong. Nothing. Just snow and forest and a small log structure that looked like it had been built in the 70s and hadn't been updated since. "This is it?" Victoria asked, stepping out behind him. "This is it." She looked at the cabin, then at the surrounding woods, then back at Lucas. "Your friend won't mind?" "Danny owes me." "He won't mind." Mitchell was already at the trunk, pulling out bags. The laptop case, a duffel that clinked when he set it down. Lucas didn't ask what was in it. He had a pretty good idea. The cabin door was locked, but Lucas knew where Danny kept the spare key, under a rock near the propane tank, wrapped in plastic to keep it dry. He retrieved it, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The interior smelled like dust and old wood smoke. There was a main room with a couch, a wood stove, and a kitchen area that consisted of a sink, a hot plate, and a mini fridge. 2 small bedrooms branched off to the left. No TV, no Wi-Fi, just a battery-powered radio on the counter and a stack of paperback westerns on a shelf. "Home sweet home," Lucas muttered. Victoria followed him in, glancing around with an expression that suggested she'd never been anywhere this rustic in her life. Mitchell came in last, already assessing exits, sight lines, defensive positions. "We'll need to get the stove going," Mitchell said, "Temperature's dropping fast." Lucas set Emma down on the couch and wrapped her in the blanket he found draped over the armrest. She was quiet now, too quiet. Her eyes had that glazed look kids got when they'd hit their limit and shut down. "Hey," he said softly, kneeling in front of her. "You hungry?" She shook her head. "You sure? I could make you some hot chocolate. There's probably some packets in the—" "I want to go home." Lucas's chest tightened. "I know, sweetheart. Soon." "You keep saying that, because it's true." "When is soon?" Lucas didn't have an answer. He brushed her hair back from her face and tried to smile. "I'll let you know as soon as I know, okay?" Emma didn't respond. She just pulled the blanket tighter and stared at the cold wood stove. Victoria touched Lucas's shoulder. "I'll stay with her. You help Mitchell." Lucas nodded and stood. He found Mitchell outside hauling firewood from a covered stack near the back of the cabin. Lucas grabbed an armful and carried it inside. They got the stove going. It took 20 minutes and half a box of matches because the flue was sticky and the kindling was damp, but eventually flames caught and heat started to spread through the small space. Mitchell set up his laptop on the kitchen counter, plugging it into a portable battery pack the size of a car battery. "This'll give me about 12 hours of runtime," he said. "After that, I'll need to recharge." "There's a generator out back," Lucas said. "Runs on propane. Should have enough fuel to last a few days." "Good. I'll need it." Mitchell's fingers were already moving across the keyboard, lines of code scrolling past faster than Lucas could follow. "I'm running a brute force algorithm on the encryption. It's going to take time, but it's the fastest method we have." Victoria stood near the window, arms crossed, watching the trees. "How long before they find us?" "Depends on how good they are," Mitchell said without looking up. "If they're tracking your phone, they'll have a general location within the hour. If they're tracking the car's GPS, even faster." "I turned my phone off," Victoria said. "Doesn't matter. Modern phones can still transmit data even when powered down. You'd need to pull the battery, and most models don't have removable batteries anymore." Mitchell finally looked up. "Best thing you can do is leave it here and get as far away as possible. But something tells me you're not going to do that." "You're right. I'm not." Mitchell shrugged and went back to his screen. "Then we prepare for company." Lucas moved to the window beside Victoria. The sun was starting to drop behind the trees, casting long shadows across the snow. He could see their tire tracks leading up to the cabin, obvious as hell. Anyone following would know exactly where they'd stopped. "This is insane," Victoria said quietly. 24 hours ago, I was sitting in a board meeting arguing about quarterly projections. Now I'm in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, hiding from people who want to kill me. "Welcome to my world," Lucas said. She glanced at him. "How are you so calm?" "I'm not. I'm terrified. I'm just good at hiding it." "For Emma?" "For Emma." Victoria looked back out the window. "I don't have kids. Never wanted them. Always thought my career was enough." She paused. "Watching you with her, I don't know. It's different than I expected." "Different how?" "You'd die for her, without hesitation." Lucas didn't answer. He didn't need to. They stood there in silence until the sun disappeared completely and the woods outside turned black. Mitchell worked through the night. Lucas tried to sleep but couldn't. Every sound made him tense, branches scraping against the roof, the wind rattling the windows, the stove popping as the wood burned down. He sat in a chair near the door with a hunting rifle Danny kept in the closet, loaded and ready. Victoria sat across from him, drinking instant coffee that tasted like burnt dirt. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. Around 3 a.m, Mitchell stood and stretched, his spine cracking. "I'm through the first layer." Lucas was on his feet immediately. "What did you find?" "Names. Hundreds of them. Politicians, CEOs, judges, law enforcement officials, all connected to offshore accounts tied to Helix." Mitchell's expression was grim. "Sarah wasn't exaggerating. This goes all the way to the top." Victoria crossed to the laptop and stared at the screen. Lucas watched her face go pale. "What?" he asked. She pointed to a name on the list. Senator Richard Callaway. He's on the Senate Banking Committee. He's also been pushing legislation to deregulate financial oversight for the past 2 years. You know him? I've met him, twice. Once at a fundraiser, once at a conference in New York. Victoria's hand was shaking. He seemed normal, charming, even. They all do, Mitchell said. That's how they get away with it. Lucas scanned the list. The names meant nothing to him. He didn't follow politics, didn't care about corporate drama, but he understood what he was looking at. Power, money, people who thought they were untouchable. How much money are we talking about? He asked. Billions, Mitchell said. Maybe more. The transactions go back 15 years, shell companies buying shell companies, funds moving through a dozen countries before landing in private accounts. It's sophisticated. Whoever built this knew exactly what they were doing. Can we trace it back to one person? Someone running the whole operation? Not yet. But Sarah was close. Look at this. Mitchell pulled up a document, pages of handwritten notes scanned into the file. Sarah's handwriting. Lucas recognized it immediately. The notes were frantic, almost illegible in places. She'd circled names, drawn connecting lines, scribbled questions in the margins. At the bottom of the last page, she'd written one word in capital letters, Arcadia. What's Arcadia? Victoria asked. I don't know, Mitchell said. It's referenced in multiple places, but there's no definition, no context. Could be a code name, could be a location, could be a person. Lucas stared at the word. Something about it felt familiar, but he couldn't place it. Keep digging, Victoria said. There has to be more. Mitchell nodded and turned back to the screen. Lucas returned to his chair by the door. Emma was still asleep on the couch, curled into a ball under the blanket. He watched her chest rise and fall and tried not to think about what would happen if they failed. Dawn came slow and gray. Lucas made eggs and toast for Emma when she woke, using the hot plate and ingredients he'd found in the mini fridge. She ate without speaking, her eyes still distant. Victoria tried to make conversation. Do you like school, Emma? Emma shrugged. What's your favorite subject? Another shrug. She's not much of a talker, Lucas said quietly. Victoria nodded and didn't push. Around 9, Mitchell stood again. I'm through the second layer, and you're not going to believe what I found. Lucas crossed the room. On the screen was a series of emails, encrypted but now decrypted. The sender was listed as AR. The recipient changed, different names, different addresses, but the content was the same. Instructions, payments, threats. Arcadia isn't a place, Mitchell said. It's a person. Whoever runs Helix goes by that name, and Sarah was tracking them. Did she figure out who it is? Victoria asked. She got close. Look at the last email. Mitchell pulled it up. It was dated 3 days before Sarah disappeared. The message was short. You're making a mistake. Walk away while you still can. AR. Sarah's reply. I know who you are, and I'm not afraid of you. Lucas felt something cold settle in his stomach. She knew. She figured it out. And they killed her for it, Victoria said. Maybe. But if she knew, she would have written it down. She would have left evidence. Mitchell scrolled through more files. There's got to be something here. Lucas thought back to the note Sarah had left with the hard drive. I trust you because you're not part of this world. She'd known she was in danger. She'd hidden the drive with him because he was invisible, unimportant. But she'd also left something else. A clue. She had to have. Wait, Lucas said. Go back to the notes. The handwritten ones. Mitchell pulled them up again. Lucas scanned the pages, looking for anything that stood out. Then he saw it. Tucked into the corner of the third page, almost too small to notice. A series of numbers. What are those? Victoria asked. Coordinates, Mitchell said, running them through a search. They point to a location in Colorado, near where Sarah's body was found. Lucas's pulse quickened. She left us a trail. Or a trap, Mitchell said. Only one way to find out. Victoria shook her head. We can't go to Colorado. We don't have time. We need to get this information out before... A sound outside. Faint but distinct. An engine. Mitchell was moving before Lucas could react, shutting the laptop and grabbing the duffel bag from the floor. Get Emma. Now. Lucas scooped his daughter up, blanket and all. She made a small sound of protest, but didn't fight him. Victoria grabbed her coat. Back door? Through the kitchen, Lucas said. They moved fast, quiet. Mitchell led the way, gun drawn. Lucas followed with Emma pressed against his chest, her face buried in his shoulder. Victoria brought up the rear. They reached the back door just as the front door exploded inward. Men poured into the cabin. 4, maybe 5. Lucas didn't stop to count. Mitchell fired twice, the sound deafening in the small space. Someone screamed. Lucas shoved through the back door and out into the snow. The cold hit like a wall. Emma cried out, and Lucas pulled the blanket tighter around her. Victoria was right behind him, slipping in the snow, catching herself. Mitchell came through last, slamming the door and firing through it blindly. "Move! Into the trees!" They ran. Lucas's boots sank into snow up to his knees, slowing him down. Emma was sobbing now, terrified, her small hands clutching his jacket. He didn't stop, couldn't stop. Gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets tore through branches, kicked up snow. Lucas ducked low, zigzagging between trees, trying to put distance between them and the cabin. Victoria stumbled. Lucas grabbed her arm, hauled her upright. "Keep moving!" Mitchell was firing controlled bursts, giving them cover, but there were too many. Lucas could hear them spreading out, surrounding them. They broke through into a small clearing. The ground dropped off sharply into a ravine, snow-covered rocks jutting up like broken teeth. "We can't go down there," Victoria gasped. "We don't have a choice," Mitchell said. Lucas looked at Emma. Her face was white, lips trembling. "Close your eyes, sweetheart. Hold on tight." He started down the slope, half sliding, half climbing. The rocks were slick with ice. His boots couldn't find purchase. He went down hard, hitting his shoulder, but managed to keep Emma cradled against him. Victoria slid past, grabbing onto branches to slow herself. Mitchell came last, still firing upward at the figures appearing at the top of the ravine. They reached the bottom in a tangle of limbs and snow. Lucas pushed himself up, every muscle screaming. Emma was crying harder now, terrified and freezing. "There's a stream," Mitchell said, pointing. "Follow it downstream. It'll lead to the road." "What about you?" Victoria asked. "I'll slow them down, buy you time." Mitchell ejected an empty magazine, slammed in a new one. "Go, now!" Lucas grabbed Victoria's arm and pulled her toward the stream. She resisted for a second, looking back at Mitchell, then let herself be led. They ran along the frozen stream bed, slipping on ice, branches whipping at their faces. Lucas could hear shouting behind them, getting closer. Emma had gone limp against him, either from cold or shock or both. The stream widened. Up ahead, Lucas could see a bridge, old, wooden, barely standing, and beyond it, through the trees, the faint line of a road. "There!" he gasped. They made it to the bridge just as the first shot rang out. Lucas felt the impact before he heard it, something hot tearing through his side, spinning him around. He went down hard, Emma tumbling from his arms into the snow. Victoria screamed. She grabbed Emma, pulling her close, shielding her with her body. Lucas tried to stand. His side was on fire, wet and warm. He looked down and saw blood spreading across his jacket. Footsteps, coming closer. A man emerged from the trees. Not one of the operatives from the cabin. Someone older, dressed in an expensive coat that didn't belong in these woods. He walked forward slowly, a pistol held loose in his right hand. "Lucas Reed," the man said. His voice was calm, almost friendly. "You've caused us quite a bit of trouble." Lucas pressed his hand against the wound in his side. "Who are you?" "That's not important. What's important is the drive. Where is it?" "Destroyed," Lucas lied. "Burned it before we left Chicago." The man smiled. "We both know that's not true. Ms. Hale is far too smart to destroy her only leverage." He turned his attention to Victoria, who was still crouched in the snow with Emma. "Aren't you Victoria?" Victoria's face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Go to hell. Eventually, but not today." The man raised the pistol, aiming it at Emma. "Last chance. The drive." Lucas tried to stand, tried to move between the gun and his daughter, but his legs wouldn't work. Blood was pooling beneath him, staining the snow red. "Don't," he gasped. "Please, she's just a kid." "Then make this easy. Tell me where the drive is and everyone walks away." "It's in the car," Victoria said quickly. "Back at the cabin, hidden in the spare tire compartment." The man studied her. "You're lying." "I'm not. Check for yourself." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the man lowered the gun slightly. "All right, we'll check, but if you're lying..." A gunshot. The man jerked, stumbled forward. Blood bloomed across his chest. He looked down at it, confused, then collapsed into the snow. Mitchell stood at the edge of the clearing, gun raised, breathing hard. Told you I'd buy you time. He crossed to Lucas, hauled him upright. Can you walk? I can try. Good enough. Mitchell looked at Victoria. Cars parked half a mile up the road. Can you carry the girl? Victoria nodded, lifting Emma into her arms. Emma was limp, unresponsive, her eyes half closed. They moved. Lucas didn't know how. Every step was agony, his vision swimming. Mitchell practically dragged him, supporting most of his weight. The road appeared through the trees, and parked on the shoulder, covered in snow, was an old pickup truck. That's not your car, Lucas mumbled. Backup plan, Mitchell said. Always have a backup plan. He got Lucas into the passenger seat, then helped Victoria and Emma into the back. The engine turned over on the third try, coughing and rattling, but it ran. Mitchell drove. Fast. Too fast for the icy road, but Lucas was past caring. He pressed his hand against his side and watched the trees blur past the window. Emma's quiet crying from the back seat was the only sound that mattered. Stay awake, Mitchell said. Lucas, stay awake. Lucas tried. He really did. But the darkness was pulling at him, heavy and warm. The last thing he saw before everything went black was Victoria's face, leaning over him, saying something he couldn't hear. Then nothing. Lucas woke in a room he didn't recognize. White walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic and recycled air. Hospital. He was in a hospital. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain tore through his side, sharp enough to make him gasp. Easy. A hand on his shoulder, pressing him back down. Mitchell's face swam into focus. You're lucky. Bullet went clean through. Missed everything important. Lucas's mouth was dry. Emma. She's fine. Victoria's with her. Down the hall. Relief flooded through him, so intense it made his eyes sting. How long was I out? 18 hours. We're in a private clinic outside Madison. Off the books. Owner owes me a favor. Lucas looked down at himself. His torso was wrapped in bandages, an IV line running into his arm. The drive? Safe. Victoria has it. Mitchell pulled a chair over and sat down. We need to move fast. Those men at the cabin weren't the only ones looking for us. Helix has resources everywhere. It's only a matter of time before they find us again. Then what do we do? Mitchell leaned forward. We finish what Sarah started. I cracked the rest of the encryption 2 hours ago. There's enough evidence on that drive to bring down half the financial sector. Politicians, CEOs, organized crime figures, all of them connected to Helix. And Arcadia? Did you figure out who that is? Mitchell's expression darkened. Yeah, we did. Before Lucas could ask, the door opened. Victoria stepped inside, Emma holding her hand. Emma's eyes widened when she saw Lucas. Dad! She ran to him, and Lucas caught her with his good arm, pulling her close despite the pain. She was warm and solid and real. I'm okay, he whispered. I'm okay, sweetheart. Emma buried her face against his chest and didn't let go. Victoria stood at the foot of the bed, her expression unreadable. We need to talk. About Arcadia. Lucas looked up at her. Who is it? Victoria glanced at Mitchell, then back at Lucas. Someone we both know. Someone with enough power to make all of this disappear. Just tell me. She took a breath. Senator Richard Calloway. He's not just on the list, he is the list. He created Helix 15 years ago as a way to launder money from international crime syndicates into legitimate businesses. He's been using his position on the banking committee to block investigations and protect his network. Sarah figured it out. That's why they killed her. Lucas stared at her. A senator. Someone who was supposed to represent the people, protect them. Instead, he'd built an empire on corruption and murder. We go public, Lucas said. Release everything, every name, every transaction. We burn it all down. If we do that, we become targets for the rest of our lives, Victoria said quietly. Calloway's network will come after us. They won't stop until we're dead. Then what's the alternative? Hide, run, spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders? Victoria didn't answer. Mitchell stood. There's a third option. We make a deal. No, Lucas said immediately. Hear me out. We approach Calloway privately. Tell him we have the evidence. Offer to keep it quiet in exchange for immunity. He leaves us alone. We leave him alone. That's surrender, Lucas said. Sarah died trying to expose these people. I'm not going to dishonor that by cutting a deal. Sarah's dead, Mitchell said bluntly. You're alive. Emma's alive. Sometimes survival is more important than justice. Lucas looked down at his daughter, still clinging to him. She was 6 years old. She deserved a life that wasn't defined by running and hiding. But she also deserved a world where people like Calloway didn't get away with murder. No deals, Lucas said quietly. We release it all, and we deal with the consequences. Victoria closed her eyes. All right, then we do this smart. We don't just dump the files online. We coordinate with journalists, legal experts, law enforcement we can trust. We build a case that's airtight. So even if they come after us, the truth is already out there. How long will that take? Lucas asked. 48 hours, maybe less. Victoria pulled out her phone. I have contacts at 3 major newspapers and 2 cable networks. People I trust. If we move fast, we can have this story everywhere by tomorrow night. Mitchell shook his head. You're making a mistake. Then it's my mistake to make, Victoria said. She left the room, already dialing. Mitchell looked at Lucas. You're going to get her killed. You know that, right? Maybe, but she's making her own choice. And Emma? What about her choice? Lucas tightened his arms around his daughter. I'm doing this for her, so she grows up in a world where people like Calloway can't hide. Mitchell didn't respond. He just walked to the window and stared out at the parking lot below. Lucas held Emma and waited for the storm to come. Because it was coming. He could feel it, like the blizzard that had started all of this, rolling in from a distance, inevitable and unstoppable. And this time there would be no place to hide. Victoria's voice drifted through the door, controlled but urgent as she made call after call. Lucas could hear fragments. Investigative team, corroborate the evidence. Protection for sources. She was building something, a wall of truth that even Calloway's network couldn't tear down. Emma had fallen asleep against Lucas's chest, exhausted from fear and cold, and too many things a 6-year-old should never have to experience. He stroked her hair and tried not to think about what the next 48 hours would bring. Mitchell still stood at the window, silent. You think I'm wrong, Lucas said quietly. Mitchell didn't turn around. I think you're brave, but brave and stupid often look the same from a distance. You have kids? Had a wife once. Lost her to a car accident 10 years ago. Mitchell's reflection in the glass was expressionless. She used to say I played things too safe, that I never took risks. Maybe she was right. He finally turned to face Lucas. But she's also not here anymore. And I am. Sometimes playing it safe is what keeps you breathing. And sometimes it just means you die slower. Mitchell almost smiled. Fair point. The door opened again. Victoria stepped back inside, phone still in her hand, and Lucas could see immediately that something had changed. Her face was tight, eyes hard. What happened? Lucas asked. I reached out to Marcus Chen at the Washington Post. He's their lead investigative reporter. We worked together on a corporate fraud case 2 years ago. Victoria crossed her arms. He was interested, very interested, until I mentioned Calloway's name. And then he got quiet. Said he'd have to run it past his editors. Said he'd call me back. Victoria's jaw clenched. He won't. I know that tone. Someone got to him, or someone got to his editors. Mitchell exhaled slowly. That was fast. Too fast, Victoria agreed, which means Calloway already knows we have the drive, and he's putting pressure on anyone who might help us release it. Lucas felt something cold settle in his chest. How many people did you call? 4. The Post, the Times, CNN, and an independent journalist I trust in Milwaukee. And how many of them are going to help? Victoria didn't answer. She didn't have to. Lucas shifted carefully, trying not to wake Emma. So what now? We just sit here while Calloway locks down every media outlet in the country? Not every outlet, just the major ones. Victoria pulled up a chair and sat down. There are smaller organizations, independent news sites, journalists who don't answer to corporate boards. It'll take longer to build credibility, but we don't have longer, Mitchell interrupted. Calloway knows where we are, or he will soon. Every minute we stay in one place is a minute closer to him finding us. Then we move, Lucas said. To where? We're running out of safe houses. Victoria leaned forward. There's someone who might help. Someone Calloway can't touch. Lucas looked at her. Who? Jonathan Reeves, former federal prosecutor. He made his career going after white-collar criminals before he retired 5 years ago. Now he runs a nonprofit focused on financial transparency and government accountability. Victoria's expression was cautious. If anyone has the resources and the willingness to take on someone like Calloway, it's him. Where is he? Mitchell asked. Minneapolis, 3 hours from here. Mitchell shook his head. That's 3 hours Calloway's people can use to set up roadblocks, surveillance, ambushes. We'd be walking into a trap. Then we don't walk, we run. Victoria stood. I'll call Reeves, explain the situation. If he agrees to meet, we leave immediately. We don't stop. We don't take detours. Straight shot. Lucas looked down at Emma, still sleeping peacefully despite everything. He thought about the life she deserved. School, friends, birthday parties, normalcy. Not this. Never this. But there was no going back. The moment those men had broken into his house, the moment Sarah had hidden that drive in his garage, the choice had been made for him. Make the call, he said. Victoria stepped into the hallway. Lucas could hear her voice again, quieter this time, more careful. Mitchell moved to the door and positioned himself where he could see both Lucas and the corridor beyond. You should rest, Mitchell said. You lost a lot of blood. Your body needs time to… I'll rest when this is over. Stubborn. Yeah, I get that a lot. Victoria returned 10 minutes later. Reeves will see us, tonight. He's arranging a secure location. Did you tell him what we have? Enough. He knows it's about Helix. He knows it involves a sitting senator. That's all he needed to hear. Victoria glanced at Emma. We should go. Now. Lucas gently shook his daughter awake. She stirred, confused, blinking up at him with eyes that looked too old for her face. We have to go, sweetheart, he said softly. Again? Yeah, again. I'm tired, Dad. I know, me too. Mitchell helped Lucas stand. The pain in his side was manageable as long as he didn't move too quickly. A nurse appeared, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the kind of face that had seen too much to be shocked by anything, and handed Lucas a bottle of pills. Antibiotics, she said. Take 2 every 8 hours, and change the dressing twice a day. If it gets red or starts to smell, you get to a real hospital. Understood? Understood. She looked at Emma, then back at Lucas. Whatever you're running from, I hope it's worth it. Lucas didn't answer. He took the pills and followed Victoria out of the room. The clinic was small, barely more than a converted house on a quiet street lined with bare trees. Mitchell's truck was parked in the back, covered in road salt and mud. They climbed in, Victoria driving this time, Lucas in the passenger seat with Emma curled up beside him, Mitchell in the back with the duffel bag and the laptop case. They pulled out onto the road just as the sun dropped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that felt too beautiful for what was happening. The drive to Minneapolis was tense and silent. Victoria kept checking the mirrors. Mitchell kept his hand near the duffel bag. Lucas kept his arm around Emma and watched the landscape blur past. Fields of snow, farmhouses with lights in the windows, billboards advertising things that felt like they belonged to a different world. Emma spoke only once. Dad? Yeah? Are we ever going to stop running? Lucas's throat tightened. Yes, soon. You keep saying that. I know, but this time I mean it. He pulled her closer. One more day, Em, just one more, and then it's over. She didn't respond, just pressed her face against his jacket and closed her eyes. They reached the outskirts of Minneapolis around 9. Victoria followed the GPS to an address in a neighborhood Lucas didn't recognize. Older homes, narrow streets, the kind of place that felt lived in and tired. She parked in front of a 2-story brick building with a small sign near the door. Reeves Foundation for Financial Justice. This is it, she said. Mitchell scanned the street. Looks clear, but stay alert. They got out. The cold was brutal, wind cutting through Lucas's jacket like it wasn't even there. Emma buried her face against his chest as they hurried toward the door. It opened before they reached it. A man stood in the doorway, late 60s, gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, wearing a sweater that looked like it had been owned since the 90s. He had the kind of face that inspired trust without trying. Victoria, he said, extending a hand. Jonathan, thank you for this. Come inside, quickly. They stepped into a narrow hallway that smelled like old books and coffee. Reeves led them to a small office cluttered with filing cabinets and stacks of paper. A younger woman sat at a desk in the corner, typing on a laptop. She looked up when they entered, nodded once, and went back to her work. "That's Caroline," Reeves said, "my lead researcher. Anything you say in front of me, you can say in front of her." Victoria gestured to Lucas and Emma. "This is Lucas Reed and his daughter, and Mitchell Garrett, head of my security." Reeves shook Lucas's hand, his grip firm but not aggressive. "You're the one who found Sarah Brennan's files." "I'm the one they were hidden with," Lucas corrected. "I didn't find anything. They found me." Reeves nodded slowly. "Sarah was a good investigator, relentless. I worked with her briefly when she was consulting on a case involving international banking fraud. She had a gift for seeing patterns others missed." His expression darkened. "When I heard about her death, I knew it wasn't an accident, but I couldn't prove it." "Now you can," Victoria said. She pulled the hard drive from her coat and set it on the desk. "Everything she found is on here. Names, transactions, evidence linking Senator Calloway to Helix. Enough to bury him." Reeves stared at the drive like it was a loaded gun. "You're sure it's authentic?" "We had it analyzed by an expert. It's real." "And you're willing to go public with it, knowing what that means?" "We don't have a choice," Lucas said. "Calloway's people have already tried to kill us twice. If we don't expose him, they'll keep coming until we're dead." Reeves picked up the drive, turned it over in his hands. "Exposing a sitting senator is no small thing. He'll have lawyers, PR firms, allies in the media. They'll discredit you, attack your character, question the authenticity of the evidence. It'll be ugly." "I don't care," Victoria said. "I want him destroyed." "And you?" Reeves looked at Lucas. "What do you want?" Lucas glanced down at Emma, who had fallen asleep again in his arms. "I want my daughter to be safe. That's it. That's all I've ever wanted." Reeves was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, I'll help you. But we do this right. We don't just dump the files and hope for the best. We build a coalition. We bring in legal experts, journalists who can't be bought, law enforcement officials we can trust. We make the case airtight before we go public." "How long will that take?" Mitchell asked. 72 hours. Maybe less if we move fast." "We don't have 72 hours," Mitchell said. "Calloway knows we have the drive. He's going to come after us with everything he has." "Then we make sure you're protected." Reeves turned to Caroline. "Contact the Safe House Network. Get Mr. Reed and his daughter somewhere secure, somewhere off the grid." Caroline nodded and picked up her phone. Victoria leaned against the desk. "What about me?" "You stay here. Work with me and my team. We'll need your knowledge of Helix's corporate structure to build the narrative." Reeves looked at Mitchell. "And you?" "I go where they go," Mitchell said, gesturing to Lucas and Emma. "Good. You'll need protection." Reeves opened a drawer and pulled out a business card. "There's a former FBI agent who runs a private security firm. He owes me a favor. I'll have him meet you at the safe house." Lucas shifted Emma's weight in his arms. "Where's the safe house?" "Northern Minnesota, middle of nowhere. No one will find you there." "That's what they said about the cabin," Lucas muttered. "This is different. The network I'm talking about has been protecting witnesses and whistleblowers for 20 years. They know how to stay hidden." Reeves handed the card to Mitchell. "Trust me." Mitchell pocketed it without comment. Caroline hung up her phone. "Safe house is ready. Address is being sent to an encrypted line. You'll receive it once you're on the road." Reeves stood. "You should leave now. The longer you stay in one place, the more vulnerable you are." Victoria crossed to Lucas. "You'll be okay?" "I'll be fine. Just finish this." "I will." She hesitated, then reached out and squeezed his hand. "Thank you. For not running. For not taking the easy way out." "There is no easy way out." Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "No, I guess there isn't." Lucas carried Emma back to the truck. Mitchell started the engine while Caroline sent the encrypted address. They pulled away from the building and merged onto the highway heading north. The city lights faded behind them. The road stretched out, dark and empty. Emma woke briefly, asked where they were going, and fell back asleep when Lucas told her somewhere safe. He hoped that was true. The safe house was a small ranch-style home at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by pine trees and silence. A man was waiting on the porch when they arrived, mid-40s, muscular, with the kind of alertness that never turned off. He introduced himself as Agent Brendan Shaw, former FBI, now working private security. Reeves briefed me, Shaw said, shaking Mitchell's hand. You'll be safe here. Perimeter is monitored, exits are secured, and I've got backup 10 minutes out if we need it. Let's hope we don't, Mitchell said. Shaw led them inside. The interior was simple. Functional furniture, thick curtains, a kitchen stocked with non-perishables. There were 2 bedrooms, a bathroom that smelled like bleach, and a living room with a couch that had seen better days. Lucas put Emma to bed in the smaller bedroom, tucking her in and kissing her forehead. She didn't wake. He stood there for a moment, watching her breathe, then closed the door softly and returned to the living room. Shaw and Mitchell were standing near the window, speaking in low voices. They stopped when Lucas entered. Everything all right? Lucas asked. Fine, Shaw said. Just going over security protocols. Lucas didn't believe him, but he was too tired to push. He sank onto the couch and closed his eyes. You should sleep, Mitchell said. Can't. Try anyway. You're no good to anyone running on fumes. Lucas opened his eyes. What happens if this doesn't work? If Reeves can't build the case in time? Mitchell didn't answer immediately. Then he said, We adapt. We always adapt. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Shaw's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then stepped into the kitchen. Lucas watched him go. Something's wrong. Maybe, maybe not. Mitchell sat down in the chair across from him. Shaw's been doing this a long time. If there was a real threat, he'd tell us. Would he? Mitchell didn't answer. Shaw returned a minute later. His expression was carefully neutral, but Lucas caught the tension in his shoulders. What is it? Lucas asked. Reeves just called. Calloway knows you're working with him. Lucas felt his stomach drop. How? Someone leaked. One of the journalists Victoria contacted, maybe. Or someone inside Reeves's organization. Shaw crossed his arms. Doesn't matter how. What matters is that Calloway's putting pressure on Reeves to back off. Legal threats, political pressure, the works. Will he back off? Jonathan Reeves? Shaw almost smiled. Not a chance. But it means things are going to escalate. Fast. How fast? Calloway's already filing injunctions to block the release of the files. He's claiming they were obtained illegally, that they violate privacy laws, that they're fabricated. His legal team is working overtime to bury this before it sees daylight. Lucas stood. Then we go around them. We release the files ourselves, post them online, send them to every news outlet in the country. That won't work, Mitchell said. Without proper context, without corroboration, they'll just look like conspiracy theory garbage. Calloway will discredit them in hours. Then what do we do? Shaw's phone buzzed again. This time, when he looked at it, his expression changed. We have a problem. What kind of problem? 3 vehicles just turned onto the access road, coming this way. Mitchell was on his feet immediately. How far out? 2 minutes? Maybe less? Lucas's heart kicked into overdrive. Emma, get her, now! Shaw was already moving, pulling weapons from a closet near the door. He tossed one to Mitchell, who caught it without looking. Lucas ran to the bedroom, shook Emma awake. She blinked up at him, confused and frightened. We have to go, he said, pulling her from the bed. Why? What's happening? Just stay with me. Don't let go. He carried her back to the living room. Shaw was at the window, peering through a gap in the curtains. They're here, car doors slamming, voices, footsteps on gravel. Mitchell grabbed the duffel bag. Back door? Locked from the outside, reinforced steel. We're not getting through it without time. Shaw turned to face them. We make a stand here. 3 of us, unknown number of them. Not great odds, but we've faced worse. Lucas looked down at Emma. She was trembling, her eyes wide with terror. No, not again. He wasn't going to let her go through this again. There has to be another way out, he said. Shaw shook his head. This house was designed as a defensive position. One way in, one way out. The idea is to hold until backup arrives. How long until backup gets here? 10 minutes. We don't have 10 minutes. A voice outside, amplified by a megaphone. We know you're in there. Come out with the drive and no one gets hurt. Shaw positioned himself near the door. Mitchell took the window. Lucas stood in the center of the room, holding Emma, feeling completely useless. What do I do? He asked. Stay down, Mitchell said, and keep her quiet. Lucas sank to the floor, pulling Emma into his lap. She buried her face against his chest, her small body shaking. The voice came again. "You have 60 seconds, then we come in." Shaw glanced at Mitchell. "Ideas? We could negotiate. Buy time." "They're not here to negotiate. They're here to kill us and take the drive." "Then we don't give them the chance." Shaw nodded. He unlocked the door, cracked it open, and shouted through the gap. "We need more time. We have a child in here." A pause. Then, 30 seconds. Shaw closed the door. "Well, that didn't work." Lucas tightened his arms around Emma. His mind was racing, searching for options, finding nothing. They were trapped, outgunned, out of time. And then Emma whispered, "Dad, there's a window in the bathroom." Lucas looked down at her. "What?" "In the bathroom. There's a little window. I saw it when we got here." Shaw turned. "The bathroom window is too small for an adult." "But not for a kid," Lucas said. Mitchell crossed the room in 3 strides. "Where does it lead?" "Back of the house. Dense tree cover. If she can get through, she can hide in the woods until backup arrives." "No," Lucas said immediately. "Absolutely not. She's 6 years old. I'm not sending her out there alone." "You don't have a choice," Shaw said. "If they breach this house, she's dead. We're all dead. At least this way she has a chance." Lucas looked at Emma. She was staring up at him with those big, terrified eyes, and he felt something inside him break. "I can't," he whispered. "Dad." Emma's voice was small but steady. "I can do it." I'm not a baby. I can hide. I'm good at hiding." Lucas thought about the night this all started. Emma hiding in her closet, thinking it was a game, staying quiet while armed men searched the house. She'd been brave then, braver than he'd given her credit for, but this was different. This was sending her out into the dark, alone, with people hunting them. The voice outside, "Time's up." Shaw grabbed Lucas's arm. "Decide. Now." Lucas looked at Mitchell, then at Shaw, then back at Emma. "Okay," he said, his voice breaking. "Okay." He carried her to the bathroom. The window was small, barely 2 feet across, but Emma was small too. She could fit. Lucas set her down and knelt in front of her. "Listen to me very carefully. You're going to climb through this window. You're going to run into the trees and hide. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just hide. And when you hear sirens, when you hear police, you come out. Not before. Understand?" Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I love you so much," Lucas whispered. "You're the bravest person I know." "I love you too, Dad." He lifted her up. She climbed onto the sink, then squeezed through the window. Lucas watched her drop into the snow outside, watched her look back at him one more time. "Go," he said. "Run." She ran. Lucas closed the window and returned to the living room just as the front door exploded inward. Men poured through. 4, 5, 6 of them, armed and moving with military precision. Shaw fired first, dropping one. Mitchell took out another. Lucas grabbed a lamp and swung it at the nearest figure, catching him across the temple. Chaos. Gunfire. Shouting. Lucas fought with everything he had. Fists, elbows, desperation. Someone hit him across the face, and he went down hard. Blood filled his mouth. He saw Mitchell go down, saw Shaw take a bullet to the shoulder and collapse. The room spun. Lucas tried to stand, couldn't. Someone kicked him in the ribs, right where the bullet wound was. Pain exploded through him, white-hot and blinding. A face appeared above him, one of Calloway's men. Gun pointed at Lucas's head. "Where's the kid?" Lucas smiled, blood on his teeth. "Gone." The man's expression hardened. He raised the gun higher. Sirens. Distant but getting closer. The man froze. Then he turned and ran, shouting to the others. They retreated, fast and organized, disappearing back through the broken door. Lucas lay there, breathing hard, staring at the ceiling. Backup arrived 90 seconds later. Armed men in tactical gear, sweeping the house, securing the perimeter. Someone knelt beside Lucas, checking his pulse, asking if he could hear them. He could, but he didn't answer. He was listening for something else. A small voice. From outside. Crying. Lucas pushed himself up, ignoring the pain, ignoring the hands trying to hold him down. He stumbled to the back of the house, and out the door Shaw had said was locked. It was open now, blown off its hinges. And there, huddled against a tree 30 feet away, was Emma. Lucas ran, fell, got up, ran again. He reached her and pulled her into his arms, and she was sobbing and shaking and alive. "I did it," she whispered. "I hid, just like you said." "You did perfect," Lucas gasped. "You did so perfect." He held her and didn't let go, even when the medics tried to pull her away to check her for injuries, even when someone told him he was bleeding again and needed to lie down. He held his daughter and felt the weight of the world lift just a little, because she was safe. And that was all that mattered. The hospital in Minneapolis was bigger than the clinic in Madison, brighter, louder, filled with people who moved with purpose and urgency. Lucas sat in a chair outside the examination room where doctors were checking Emma for the third time, making sure the cold hadn't done any permanent damage, that the fear hadn't broken something inside her that medicine couldn't fix. Mitchell was 2 rooms down getting his shoulder looked at. Shaw had been airlifted to a trauma center with a collapsed lung. The last Lucas had heard, he was stable but would need surgery. Victoria appeared at the end of the hallway, moving fast, her coat dusted with snow. When she saw Lucas, relief flooded her face. "Is she okay?" Victoria asked, slightly breathless. "Physically, yeah. Everything else." Lucas rubbed his face. "I don't know." Victoria sank into the chair beside him. "Reeves is moving forward. The attack on the safe house gave us leverage. He's filed emergency motions with federal courts, requesting protective orders for the evidence. And he's reached out to the Attorney General's office directly. Will it work? It's our best shot." Victoria's hands were shaking slightly. "Calloway's lawyers are fighting back hard. They're claiming the drive was stolen, that the encryption was broken illegally, that everything on it is inadmissible. But Reeves has connections. Good ones. People who've been waiting for a chance to go after someone like Calloway." Lucas stared at the floor. "How many people did we put at risk? Shaw might not make it. Mitchell took a bullet. Your career is probably destroyed. Emma." His voice cracked. "I made my 6-year-old daughter crawl through a window and hide in the woods while men with guns tried to kill us." "You kept her alive," Victoria said firmly. "That's what matters." "Is it? Because right now it feels like I've destroyed her childhood to expose some senator she's never heard of." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My father worked in finance. High-level stuff, mergers and acquisitions, the kind of world where everyone knows everyone. When I was 12, he got caught in a scandal. Insider trading. He didn't do it, but one of his partners did, and my father refused to throw him under the bus." She stared at her hands. "He lost everything. His career, his reputation, most of his friends. We went from private schools and country clubs to a 2-bedroom apartment where I could hear my parents fighting through the walls every night." Lucas looked at her. "For years I resented him," Victoria continued. "I thought he was stupid for not saving himself, for choosing loyalty over survival. But when I got older, when I understood what actually happened, I realized something." She met Lucas's eyes. "He taught me that some things are worth losing for. That integrity isn't something you negotiate when it gets expensive. Emma's 6. She doesn't understand integrity. Not yet. But one day she will. And when she does, she'll understand that her father didn't run, that he stood up to people who thought they were untouchable." Victoria's voice was steady. "That's not nothing, Lucas." Before Lucas could respond, the examination room door opened. A doctor emerged, young, tired-looking, with kind eyes. "Mr. Reed, your daughter is fine. No frostbite, no hypothermia. Her vitals are good. She's asking for you." Lucas was on his feet immediately. He stepped into the room and found Emma sitting on the examination table, wrapped in a heated blanket, holding Mr. Floppy against her chest. "Hey, sweetheart," he said softly. "Can we go home now?" Lucas's throat tightened. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because home isn't safe right now, but soon. I promise." Emma looked at him with those 2 old eyes. "You keep saying that." "I know, but this time..." "This time you mean it," Emma finished. "You said that before too." Lucas had no answer. He crossed to her and pulled her into his arms, feeling her small body against his, warm and alive and here. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for all of this. You shouldn't have to go through this." "It's okay, Dad." "It's not okay." Emma pulled back and looked at him. "The bad people. Are they gone?" "Not yet, but they will be." "Promise?" Lucas thought about making another promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Then he thought about Victoria's father, about integrity, about the kind of man he wanted Emma to remember when she was older. "I promise," he said. "One way or another, this ends. Soon." Emma nodded and rested her head against his shoulder. They stayed like that until a nurse came in and said they needed to clear the room for the next patient. Reeves called an hour later. Lucas answered on the second ring. "We're moving," Reeves said without preamble. "I've coordinated with 3 major news outlets and the Attorney General's office. Tomorrow morning at 9, we're holding a joint press conference. We're releasing everything, the full contents of the drive, Sarah's notes, the evidence linking Calloway to Helix. All of it." Lucas felt his pulse quicken. What about Calloway's injunctions? The federal judge denied them an hour ago, ruled that the public interest outweighs privacy concerns, especially given the attacks on your life and the clear pattern of witness intimidation. Reeves's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. Calloway's lawyers are scrambling, but they're out of moves. So it's really happening. It's really happening, but Lucas, you need to understand, once we do this, there's no taking it back. Your life changes. Emma's life changes. You'll be known. People will recognize you on the street. Some will call you a hero. Others will call you a liar, a thief, a traitor. The media will dig into your past, your relationships, every mistake you've ever made. I don't care. You should. Because it's not just you. Emma will grow up with this attached to her name. She'll deal with the consequences of your choice for the rest of her life. Lucas looked across the waiting room to where Emma sat with Victoria, coloring in a book someone had given her. She looked small and fragile and impossibly brave. "She'll also grow up knowing her father didn't run," Lucas said quietly, "that when it mattered, he did the right thing, even when it was hard." Reeves was silent for a moment. "All right, then I'll see you tomorrow. 9 o'clock sharp, Federal Building downtown. Security will be tight, but we'll get you in safely." "What about Calloway? What happens to him?" "If the Attorney General does what I think she will, arrests will start within 48 hours. Calloway first, then his network. It'll take months to dismantle everything, maybe years, but it starts tomorrow." Lucas closed his eyes. "Good. Get some rest, Lucas. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Reeves hung up. Lucas lowered the phone and stared at it for a long moment. Victoria appeared at his side. "What did he say?" "It's happening. Tomorrow morning, press conference, federal investigation, everything." Victoria exhaled slowly. "So we won." "Maybe. Or maybe we just survived long enough to watch other people win." Lucas pocketed his phone. "Either way, it's out of our hands now." "That doesn't bother you?" "It bothers me that I can't control what happens next. But I'm tired, Victoria. I'm tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of watching my daughter be terrified." He looked at her. "I just want this to be over." "It will be. After tomorrow." Lucas nodded. He wanted to believe that. He needed to believe that. They spent the night in a hotel room 3 blocks from the federal building, guarded by 2 federal marshals who stood outside the door and didn't speak unless spoken to. Emma fell asleep watching cartoons, finally relaxed enough to let her guard down. Lucas sat in a chair by the window and watched the city lights below, thinking about Sarah Brennan and everything that had led to this moment. She'd trusted him. A single father working in a warehouse, living paycheck to paycheck, trying to raise a daughter on his own. She'd trusted him with something bigger than both of them, something that would either change the world or get them all killed. Lucas still wasn't sure which it would be. Morning came gray and cold. Lucas woke Emma gently, helped her get dressed, made her eat breakfast, even though neither of them was hungry. Victoria arrived at 7:30, dressed in a dark suit, her hair pulled back, looking every inch the CEO she was. Mitchell showed up 10 minutes later, his arm in a sling but otherwise intact. "Ready?" he asked. "No," Lucas said, "but let's go anyway." The federal building was a fortress of concrete and glass surrounded by barricades and police vehicles. News vans lined the street, reporters already setting up cameras, preparing for the conference. Lucas saw the logos: CNN, NBC, Fox, local stations, international outlets. The whole world was watching. The marshals escorted them through a side entrance, past security checkpoints and metal detectors, up an elevator to the 3rd floor. Reeves was waiting in a conference room, surrounded by lawyers and aides and people Lucas didn't recognize. "You made it," Reeves said, shaking Lucas's hand. "How are you holding up?" "Ask me in an hour." Reeves smiled. "Fair enough." He knelt down in front of Emma. "And you must be Emma. I've heard a lot about you." Emma looked at him suspiciously. "Who are you?" "My name is Jonathan. I'm a friend of your dad's. Well, a new friend, but a good one, I hope." "Are you going to help us?" "I am. In fact, I already have." Reeves stood. "Your dad is very brave. Did you know that?" Emma nodded. "He's the bravest." "I think you might be braver." Emma didn't respond, but Lucas saw something shift in her expression, a small flicker of pride. A woman in a gray pantsuit appeared in the doorway. "We're ready, Mr. Reeves." Reeves nodded. "All right, here's how this works. I'll make the opening statement, lay out the evidence. Then Victoria will speak, providing context about Sarah Brennan's investigation. Lucas, you'll go last. Just tell your story. What happened? Why you're here. Keep it simple. Keep it honest." "What about Emma?" Lucas asked. "She stays backstage with one of my assistants. We're not putting her in front of the cameras." Lucas felt a wave of relief. "Good." They moved toward the press room. Lucas could hear the murmur of voices beyond the door, the shuffle of feet, the click of camera shutters. His heart was pounding. His palms were sweating. Victoria touched his arm. "You've got this." "Do I?" "You've survived everything they've thrown at you. A press conference is nothing." Lucas wanted to believe that. But standing here, about to step in front of the world and expose a sitting senator, felt bigger than anything he'd faced so far. The door opened. Reeves stepped through first, moving to the podium at the front of the room. Victoria followed. Then Lucas. The room erupted. Camera flashes, shouted questions, the overwhelming noise of too many people in too small a space. Lucas stayed behind Reeves, trying to look calm, trying not to think about the fact that millions of people would see this. Reeves raised his hands. The room quieted. "Good morning. My name is Jonathan Reeves, and I'm here to present evidence of widespread financial corruption involving a network known as Helix. This network, which has operated for over 15 years, has laundered billions of dollars through shell companies, offshore accounts, and legitimate businesses. It has bribed officials, influenced legislation, and silenced anyone who threatened to expose it." The room was silent now. Every reporter leaning forward, recording devices raised. 3 years ago, investigative researcher Sarah Brennan uncovered the existence of Helix. She traced its operations, identified key players, and gathered evidence that would have dismantled the entire network. Before she could release that evidence, she was murdered. Her death was ruled an accident. It wasn't. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The evidence Ms. Brennan gathered was hidden. It has recently been recovered, and today, in coordination with federal authorities, we are releasing it in full. Reeves gestured to a screen behind him. Names appeared, dozens of them, connected by lines that formed a web. At the center, Senator Richard Callaway. Senator Callaway is not just connected to Helix. He created it. He built a financial empire designed to enrich himself and his associates while evading oversight and accountability. The evidence is irrefutable, and the Department of Justice has been briefed. The room exploded. Questions shouted over each other, reporters standing, cameras swinging toward the screen. Reeves raised his hands again. "I'll take questions in a moment. But first, I want to introduce Victoria Hale, CEO of Hale Acquisitions, who will provide additional context." Victoria stepped to the podium. She looked calm, composed, every bit the professional. But Lucas could see the tension in her shoulders. "Sarah Brennan worked for me," Victoria said. "She was brilliant, dedicated, and fearless. When she came to me with evidence of corporate fraud tied to Helix, I encouraged her to pursue it. I believed the truth mattered. I still do." Her voice hardened. "But Sarah paid for that belief with her life, and for 3 years the people responsible thought they'd gotten away with it." She paused, letting the weight of that settle. "They didn't, because Sarah was smart enough to hide her evidence where it would be found, and brave enough to trust that someone would do the right thing with it." Victoria looked at Lucas. "Lucas Reed is that someone." Lucas felt every eye in the room turn toward him. His mouth went dry. Mr. Reed had no connection to Helix, no knowledge of Sarah's investigation. He was simply a friend she trusted, and when powerful people came after him and his daughter to retrieve that evidence, He didn't run. He didn't negotiate. He stood his ground. Victoria stepped back from the podium. And that's why we're here today. Reeves gestured for Lucas to come forward. Lucas's legs felt like concrete, but he moved. One step, then another, until he was standing at the podium, staring out at a sea of faces and cameras. "I'm not a whistleblower," Lucas said, his voice rougher than he intended. "I'm not an investigator or a lawyer or anyone important. I'm just a guy who works in a warehouse and tries to take care of his kid." Someone in the crowd shouted a question. Reeves silenced them with a look. "A week ago, my house was broken into. Men with guns came looking for something I didn't know I had. They threatened my daughter. They shot me. They chased us across 2 states trying to kill us before we could get this evidence to the right people." Lucas's hands gripped the edges of the podium. "I didn't ask for any of this. But once it started, I had a choice. Run and hope they'd leave us alone. Or stand up and make sure Sarah Brennan's death meant something." The room was silent. I chose to stand up. Not because I'm brave, not because I wanted to be a hero, but because my daughter was watching. And I wanted her to see that when you have the power to do the right thing, you do it, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous. Lucas looked directly at the cameras. Senator Calloway thought he was untouchable, thought he could bury the truth and bury the people who threatened him. He was wrong. Lucas stepped back from the podium. His heart was hammering, but it was done. He'd said what needed to be said. The room erupted again, questions flying, reporters shouting, the noise overwhelming. Reeves stepped forward, fielding questions with practiced ease, deflecting the ones he couldn't answer, reinforcing the ones he could. Lucas retreated to the back of the room where Mitchell was waiting. "Not bad," Mitchell said quietly. "I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's normal." Victoria joined them, her face flushed. "The Attorney General just released a statement. They're opening a criminal investigation. Arrest warrants are being prepared." Lucas closed his eyes. "It's really over." "The hard part is," Victoria said, "now comes the waiting." They left through the back exit, avoiding the crush of reporters. Emma was waiting in the conference room, coloring with the assistant who'd been watching her. When she saw Lucas, she ran to him. "Did you do it?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart, I did it." "Are the bad people going to jail?" "I think so." Emma hugged him tight. "Good." Lucas held her and felt something inside him finally start to unclench. They spent the next 3 days in a guarded hotel suite while the world reacted to the press conference. The story dominated every news cycle. Senator Calloway held his own press conference, denying everything, calling the evidence fabricated, threatening lawsuits. But his voice sounded desperate, hollow. 48 hours after Reeves's press conference, federal agents arrested Calloway at his home in Virginia. The footage played on every channel, the senator in handcuffs being led to a waiting car, his expression a mixture of rage and disbelief. Other arrests followed. Corporate executives, lawyers, offshore bankers. Helix began to unravel, each thread pulled revealing more corruption, more complicity, more people who'd thought they were safe. Lucas watched it all from the hotel room, Emma beside him, and felt a strange sense of detachment. This was bigger than him now. The machinery of justice grinding forward, slow but inexorable. Victoria called on the 4th day. "Reeves wants to meet, says there's something we need to discuss." "What?" "He didn't say, just that it's important." They met at Reeves's office. The old man looked tired but satisfied, like someone who'd finally crossed a finish line he'd been running toward for years. "The Department of Justice wants your testimony," Reeves said without preamble. "Full depositions, everything you know, everything you experienced. It'll take weeks, maybe months, but it's crucial for building the case against Calloway and his network." "I'll do it," Lucas said. "There's more." Reeves leaned forward. "The government is offering you witness protection, new identities, relocation, the works. They think there's still a risk from Helix's remnants." Lucas looked at Emma. She was sitting in a chair near the window, drawing pictures of houses and trees and families. "What do you think?" Lucas asked Victoria. "I think you should consider it seriously. These people won't forget. Even with Calloway in custody, there are others, people with resources and grudges." "And if I say no?" "Then you take your chances," Reeves said. "The FBI will provide security during the trial. After that, you're on your own." Lucas thought about starting over, new names, new city, new life, leaving behind everything he'd built, every connection, every memory. He thought about Emma growing up in hiding, always looking over her shoulder, never fully able to trust that she was safe. And he thought about Victoria's words, that integrity wasn't something you negotiated when it got expensive. "No," Lucas said finally. "No witness protection. We go home. We rebuild. We live our lives." Reeves frowned. "That's risky. Everything's risky, but I'm tired of running, and I'm tired of being afraid." Lucas looked at Emma. "I want her to grow up in the world she was born into, not hiding from it." Victoria reached over and squeezed his hand. "Then that's what you'll do." The trial began 6 months later. Lucas testified for 3 days, walking the jury through everything that had happened: the break-in, the chase, the evidence, the attacks. He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't try to make himself sound braver than he was, just told the truth. Calloway's lawyers tried to discredit him, paint him as an opportunist who'd stolen the drive for personal gain, but the evidence spoke louder than their arguments. The files, the transactions, Sarah's notes, all of it pointing to one man. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous: guilty, on all counts. Calloway was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. His network was dismantled, assets seized, accounts frozen. The financial empire he'd built over 15 years collapsed in a matter of months. Lucas watched the sentencing from the gallery, Emma beside him, Victoria on his other side. When the judge read the sentence, he felt Emma's small hand slip into his. "Is it over now?" she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart, it's over." Life after the trial was strange. Lucas returned to work at the warehouse, but people looked at him differently now. Some with respect, some with suspicion, some with curiosity. He was the guy who'd brought down a senator, the whistleblower, the hero. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a father who'd done what he had to do to protect his daughter. Emma started 2nd grade. She struggled at first. Nightmares, anxiety, trouble concentrating. Lucas got her into therapy, sat with her when the fear got too big, reminded her every day that she was safe now. Slowly, she started to heal. The nightmares became less frequent. The smiles came easier. She made friends, joined the soccer team, started acting like a kid again. Victoria stayed in touch. She'd stepped down as CEO of Hale Acquisitions. Too much scrutiny, too much association with the scandal. But she'd started a new foundation focused on financial transparency and corporate accountability, working with Reeves to prevent another helix from taking root. She visited Lucas and Emma every few weeks. Sometimes they'd have dinner. Sometimes they'd just talk. There was something between them now, something neither of them had named but both understood. A bond forged in crisis, strengthened by survival. One evening in early spring, almost a year after that first night, Victoria brought flowers to Sarah Brennan's grave. Lucas went with her, Emma staying home with Mrs. Alvarez. They stood in silence for a long time, looking at the simple headstone with Sarah's name and dates. "Do you think she'd be proud?" Victoria asked quietly. "I think she'd be pissed it took so long," Lucas said. Victoria almost smiled. "Yeah, probably. But yeah, I think she'd be proud. We finished what she started." "We did." Victoria set the flowers down. "I've been thinking about something you said during the press conference." "What?" "That you wanted Emma to see that when you have the power to do the right thing, you do it, even when it's hard." Victoria looked at him. "I've spent my whole career making compromises, telling myself that's just how the world works, that you can't change the system from outside it. And now? Now I think maybe the system needs more people willing to stand outside it and shout." Lucas nodded. Sarah knew that. That's why she hid the evidence instead of trying to work within the system. She knew it was rigged. She also knew she needed help, that she couldn't do it alone. Victoria turned to face him fully. "Thank you, Lucas, for not running, for standing with us. I didn't have much choice. You had every choice. You could have destroyed the drive, moved away, changed your name. No one would have blamed you." Lucas thought about that, about all the moments where he could have walked away, saved himself, protected Emma by running instead of fighting. "Maybe," he said, "but then I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror, or look at Emma and tell her to be brave when things get hard." They walked back to the car in comfortable silence. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded Lucas of that first night, driving through the blizzard, not knowing what was waiting for him at home. So much had changed since then, and yet, in the ways that mattered, everything was the same. He was still a single father, still working a job that barely paid enough, still trying to give his daughter a good life. But Emma was safe now, really safe. Not just hidden, but protected by the truth that had been brought into the light. That night, Lucas tucked Emma into bed and sat with her while she drifted off to sleep. She looked peaceful, her breathing steady, Mr. Floppy tucked under her arm. "Dad?" she murmured, half asleep. "Yeah, Em?" "I'm glad we didn't run away." Lucas's throat tightened. "Me too, sweetheart. Because we're brave, right? The bravest." Emma smiled and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep. Lucas sat there for a long time, watching her. Thinking about Sarah Brennan and the choice she'd made to trust him. Thinking about Victoria and the foundation she was building. Thinking about all the small moments of courage that had led them here. The world hadn't changed overnight. There were still corrupt officials, still financial networks operating in the shadows, still people who thought they were above the law. But now there was also proof that they weren't untouchable. That ordinary people, a warehouse worker, a CEO, a dead investigator's hidden evidence, could bring them down. That had to mean something. Lucas stood, kissed Emma's forehead, and walked to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Street lights glowing. Houses lit from within. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the battles being fought in the shadows to keep those lives safe. He thought about the letter Sarah had left, the one where she'd said she trusted him because he wasn't part of that world. Because he just took care of the people he loved. She'd been right. That's all he'd ever wanted to do. Take care of Emma. Give her a life worth living. And somehow, in doing that, he'd help change the world. Just a little. Just enough. Lucas turned away from the window and headed downstairs. Victoria had texted earlier, asking if he wanted to grab coffee tomorrow morning. He typed back a yes. Life was moving forward. Slowly, carefully, but forward nonetheless. And for the first time in a long time, Lucas felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel before. Hope. Not the fragile kind that shattered at the first sign of trouble, but the stubborn kind. The kind that survived blizzards and break-ins and men with guns. The kind that whispered, even in the darkest moments, that things could get better. That they would get better. Lucas made himself a cup of tea, sat on the couch in the quiet house, and let himself believe it. 3 months later, on a clear winter morning, Lucas walked with Emma through the park near their house. The snow was fresh and clean, unmarked except for their footprints trailing behind them. Emma ran ahead, laughing, throwing snowballs at trees, acting like the kid she should have been all along. Victoria joined them halfway through, appearing from the parking lot with coffee and hot chocolate. They walked together, the three of them, talking about nothing important. About Emma's upcoming school play, about Victoria's foundation, about the new coffee shop that had opened downtown. Normal things, beautiful in their ordinariness. At some point, Emma ran back to them, her cheeks flushed from cold and happiness. "Can we make a snowman?" she asked. "Absolutely," Lucas said. They built one together. It was lopsided and lumpy and perfect. Emma insisted on using rocks for the eyes and a stick for the smile. When they finished, she stepped back and admired their work. "He looks happy," Emma said. "He does," Victoria agreed. "Like us." Lucas looked at his daughter, at the joy in her face, at the way she stood between him and Victoria, completely at ease, no shadows in her eyes. "Yeah," he said softly, "like us." They stayed in the park until the sun started to drop, painting long shadows across the snow. Then they walked home together, leaving footprints that would eventually be covered by the next storm. But for now, they were there, visible, real, proof that they'd survived. And that was enough. Because survival wasn't the same as victory. It was better. It was earned. It was the choice to keep going even when the world tried to break you, to stand up even when staying down would be easier, to protect the people you loved even when it cost everything. Lucas had learned that the hard way, through fear and pain and impossible choices, through moments where he thought he'd lose Emma, lose himself, lose everything that mattered. But he hadn't lost. None of them had. They'd found something instead, something stronger than the corruption they'd exposed, stronger than the network they'd dismantled. They'd found each other. A family built not on blood or obligation, but on trust forged in crisis. On the shared knowledge that when it mattered most, they'd chosen courage over comfort. And that choice had changed everything. Not just for them, but for everyone who'd been watching. Everyone who'd needed to see that power could be challenged, that the truth could still matter, that ordinary people could still make a difference. Sarah Brennan had known that. That's why she'd hidden the evidence, why she'd trusted Lucas. And now, standing in his living room as Emma settled in to watch a movie and Victoria made popcorn in the kitchen, Lucas finally understood what Sarah had been trying to tell him. That the world needed people who weren't part of the system. People who couldn't be bought or intimidated or convinced that fighting was pointless. People who just took care of the people they loved. Because that kind of love, fierce and protective and unwavering, was the most dangerous thing to people who relied on fear and silence. It couldn't be negotiated away. Couldn't be hidden or buried or destroyed. It just kept fighting, kept standing, kept believing that tomorrow could be better than today. Lucas sat down on the couch, Emma curling up beside him, Victoria joining them a moment later with a bowl of popcorn. The movie started. Some animated thing with talking animals and lessons about friendship. Emma laughed at the jokes, completely absorbed, and Lucas wrapped his arm around his daughter and let himself enjoy this moment. This quiet, ordinary, perfect moment. Because after everything they'd been through, they'd earned it. The storm that had tried to break them was over, and what remained was stronger than what had come before. A family, chosen in the dark, that would endure long after the danger was gone.